Thanks for tuning into this special episode of Howe's Things from the David A. Howe Public Library, recorded right here in Wellsville, New York. I'm Nick Gunning, and I'm joined as always by Malik Acosta. Malik, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
I know it. Good
Yes,
times.
sir.
This is our Black History Month episode, which we've done several of, and we batted around a few options this time, and we settled on Bob Marley.
Bob.
And I'm glad we did, because I knew very little about Bob Marley. Like,
Yes.
I could hum the hits and that's about it, but I really didn't know anything about his life or his influence, other than just it's such a pop culture phenomenon, you know?
Right.
So we'll get into all that in a minute, but first I want to open up our books and see where our bookmarks are at. Malik, what are you reading? What are you watching these days?
Nowadays, I'm really trying to get to see that Bob Marley movie.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to see it this weekend, but things happened to where I couldn't get to see it. But that's what I'm really focused on.
Okay.
Knowing that we was doing the podcast, I kind of just been watching some documentaries. I've been studying Bob Marley for maybe 15 years now, so it surprises me. Even this last week, I've learned new things about him. It's just always something new to learn about him.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Are you binging any shows or anything? What was the last show you finished?
The last show I finished was this show called Warrior.
Okay.
I think it's on HBO Max.
Okay.
And it's basically going back to Bruce Lee,
Yes.
another one of our favorite guys.
Okay.
This Warrior is actually a story that Bruce Lee wrote. When he was writing, when he was trying to direct movies.
Okay.
And it's one of the movies, or a show actually, that he had written for himself that he just never got to do.
Yeah.
So now that Shannon Lee, which is his daughter, they put it into production, and it's about, I think it's 3 or 4 seasons now. It's really good show, though. It's called Warriors.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That sounds good. I have been showing my son all of the Karate Kid movies because he's big into, he takes jiu-jitsu and everything, and so he's been interested. And I was like, let's watch Karate Kid, because I hadn't seen it since I was probably that age, you know? We watched the originals, we watched the Hilary Swank one, and we just finished with the Jaden Smith, Jackie Chan one, which is pretty good.
I forgot about the Hilary Swank one.
Oh, yeah, like right in
that
between
one.
there.
Yeah.
That one I'd never seen before, like never even seen a moment of it, so that was the first time for that.
It was good.
Yeah. But and they just announced they're doing a new Karate Kid movie with Jackie Chan from the Jaden Smith movies and Ralph Macchio from the originals, like teaming up.
Really?
So I think that's cool. But that led to my wife and I starting Cobra Kai, which is so good.
Really?
Yes.
I've been hearing good things.
It's so fun. Like it is the perfect balance of sort of like leaning into the cheesy 80s vibes that the originals have, but also it's a true drama, but it's also hilarious. I don't know how they're walking this fine line, but I'm really liking it a lot.
All the original characters? Or?
It is.
Yeah.
They're bringing back like everybody. It's wild. I read that they're working on the 6th and final season right now, and we just started season 3, so we're like at the halfway point.
Okay.
So yeah, it's fun. I'm having a good time with it.
Oh yeah. It doesn't even feel like it's been that 6 seasons already.
I know.
I feel like I just remember
Yeah.
them announcing Cobra Kai.
I know.
Man, it's been 6 seasons. I haven't watched any of them yet.
Yeah.
So I definitely got to get into
It's
that.
good. It started on like YouTube, like
Right,
YouTube
YouTube
Red
TV.
or whatever it was. Yeah,
YouTube
YouTube
TV, yeah, 'cause I
and
had
then
that.
it switched to Netflix, and so now all the new stuff is on Netflix. There's also 2 video games, like 2 Cobra Kai video games.
Really?
So yeah, they're going all in on Cobra
good.
Kai. So that's pretty good. Are you reading anything at the moment?
Reading right now, not reading too much. I actually been I found this book from Einstein, and it's basically just about the theory of relativity.
Oh, okay.
So I'm the kind of person that the way I learn is if I repeatedly just keep going over stuff.
Yeah.
But I have to just keep going over it until it just sticks.
Okay.
So that's something with Einstein. I studied him a while ago. So I'm just kind of just diving back in, maybe seeing if I can learn some new stuff.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So you're reading science. I'm reading science fiction because I just
Right.
started God
It's all
Emperor
the
of
same to
Dune.
me.
Are you a Dune fan? You are.
I
right?
am a Dune fan. I
Okay.
just watched. Actually, that is something I watched.
Okay.
I watched Dune because I'm getting ready for part 2.
Yeah, I'm ready for it.
So I watched
Yeah.
the first one to kind of familiarize myself. I didn't realize it was so long.
It's
but
long. It's
I
almost
love
3
long
hours.
Movies.
Yeah.
I love long movies.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. Well, I have a friend, my friend Sarah and I, we always read the Dune books together. And so we're on God Emperor of Dune, and that's the 4th book that Frank Herbert wrote, and it's trippy.
Really?
Like it's the end of the previous book was a real, I don't know if I would say twist, but it ends on a big like, what? You know,
Right.
And so book 4 is starting from a real weird place, but I'm having a good time with it, and I'm very excited about Dune Part 2.
Yes, me too.
So, yeah, looking forward to it. All right, well, should we dive into the man of the hour?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me hit you with a little bit of a timeline here of the life of Bob Marley. So this is adapted from The Guardian. Stephen Dowling put out an extended timeline, and I pulled out the highlights here. So let's just run through it. Okay. Born 1945, recorded his first song, Judge Not, in 1962. Formed the Wailers with Peter Tosh, Bunny Livingstone, Junior Braithwaite, Beverly Kelso, and Cherry Smith in 1963. 1966, marries Rita Anderson, who was a singer with the I3s and the Solettes. 1971, formed his own record label, Tough Gong. 1973, released the album Catch a Fire, which was the first of their albums that really hit big. 75, the Natty Dread album is released, featuring their song No Woman, No Cry, and that was the one that really made them superstars. 1976, Bob and Rita are injured in an attempted assassination. Both survived the assassination and went on with their planned concert with him like in a sling. 1977, the doctors find cancer in his foot after treating him for a football injury. They got the cancer out that they could find. 1978 was the One Love Peace concert where rival politicians attend, and he gets them to shake hands at a time where Jamaica is just destroyed in nearly a civil war after British rule for all that time. So doing something like that is monumental. It's thinking about the divided times we live in right now and picturing something like that happen. It's unfathomable, and he did it.
Oh, yes.
1980, Marley and the Wailers perform in the African nation of Zimbabwe. Shortly after this, it's discovered that his cancers returned and spread to his lungs, liver, and brain. And he dies May 11th, 1981, at the age of 36.
Sad.
It is. It's very sad. The 2024 movie, Bob Marley, One Love, starring Kinsley Benadir as Bob and written and directed by Ronaldo Marcus Green, starts with the focus on that One Love Peace concert and sort of goes forward and gives you a little bit of flashbacks about his early life. Here are a few of the awards that he won. He won the Peace Medal of the Third World from the United Nations in 1978, the Jamaican Order of Merit in 1981. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1994. Time magazine named Exodus the Album of the Year in 1999. One Love was named Song of the Millennium by the BBC in the year 2000. He received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, both in 2001. He released 13 albums, 2 live albums, and the list goes on and on. So there's a little bit of an overview for you. Tell me, Malik, how did you first get into Bob Marley, and what's that journey been like for you?
For me, I was actually thinking about this earlier this week because I was just thinking, what did get me into Bob Marley? But I'm the kind of guy that I look for motivation in a lot of different places. Yeah. And people like Bruce Lee, Bob Marley, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, those kind of people, I just gravitate towards
all
them,
inspirational figures. Yeah,
exactly. When I hear about the special things they did, and for Bob Marley, I just kept getting this message of his music was all about love. His whole movement was about friendship and love, and that 70s movement of peace and everything. Yeah, which we haven't seen since then.
True. That is true. Yeah.
I really thought that was interesting that people, the whole Rastafarian movement. And then I love music. So I started collecting his CDs and listening to his music. And as I listened to his music, it just kind of became like a life of his own. Yeah. I just started diving into the books and to his greatest hits. Yeah. I would say it's been probably about 15 to 17 years now that I've been kind of looking at him and studying him.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember, like, as a kid, seeing Bob Marley on T-shirts and hats and posters and just like everywhere.
What's this about?
Because I mean, I've always been into music and things, and I certainly would have known One Love and Three Little Birds and probably Stir It Up were all ones that I could have at least hit you with the chorus.
If you heard it, you would recognize.
Yes, exactly.
It.
And so, just over the years, I've heard more and more of the music. But when my son was born, I got these board books for him, and they're based on Bob Marley songs. There's one on Every Little Thing.
Oh, that's cool.
Get Up, Stand Up, and One Love. These are all by Bob Marley's daughter, Cedella Marley, with illustrations by Vanessa Brantley Newton. And it takes the lyrics to the song. It's not just the lyrics set to pictures, but it kind of uses the chorus of those songs as a framework for these picture books that are just very positive and nice and pleasant. And so we've had these books, and we have them here in the library as well, but like we've had these books in our house since my son was little, and I read it to him a million times, and the illustrations are great. I mean, if you thumb through,
I've never seen these before. Like that's what I say. I learn something new every day, and my son would love these too.
Yeah. So like I'm reading these to my son, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I know this song. I know what this song is from. Right. So I read those, and there's another one called I, Bob Marley, which is by Tony Medina, which is also a kid's book, a little bit more of a kid's biography. But these picture books by Cedella Marley, I just think are really cool.
They are.
And it's a nice way to introduce some of the concepts to a younger generation, and they just work really well. So that was sort of like started thinking about Bob Marley a little bit more when I was reading these books to my son. But until you and I settled on this, and you suggested some albums for me to listen to, I had never sat down and like listened to a whole Bob Marley album or just put in a playlist that's just Bob Marley. And going back to what you're saying about his whole thing just being like about peace and about love, I was, I had headphones in, I was listening to it, and I was doing other things, and I was just feeling so mellow, just feeling so like restful. And I like pulled off the headphone, and my wife's sitting next to me, and I'm like, this music is really doing something to me, man.
It does.
And I've enjoyed it ever since. So, because we've been talking about this for a couple of months, so I've been listening for a couple of months now, and it's definitely something that's going to be like a permanent part of my rotation going forward, because it's very unlike other things that I listen to typically. But I don't know, just the beats and the melodies. Like I just have never thought much about reggae music. Like it just has never. I don't know. I just haven't engaged in it that much. But it's really.
Not even in your younger days with all the dancing and stuff? You wasn't into that?
No, not really. I remember loving the song Don't Worry, Be Happy, which I think is vaguely reggae. Yeah. You know what I mean?
But that's still that vibe.
A little bit more poppy. So I always liked that song. But no, not really. Oh, and so digging into that and the history of reggae and even like the Rastafari movement, which I didn't know much about, it's just opened my eyes to a lot of things. It's been really interesting.
Me too. Even this last dive in.
Yeah.
I never understood how political and how what was going on in Jamaica affected Bob's life. I just never realized it was that intense.
Yeah.
Where he almost lost his life over politics.
Yeah.
Something that he didn't even really want any part of.
Exactly.
So I never understood that part.
No.
Until I matured,
I never tied it together because, Jamaica was under British rule for over 300 years.
Right.
And so when that goes away and creates a bit of a power vacuum and you have essentially a civil war, that's what he's growing up in. You know what I mean? Like that's the context of his life.
Right.
And so it's like his music is certainly political, but I feel like in a way where it kind of transcends politics.
Yeah.
It's political in the sense that it's advocating for freedom and happiness and for people getting what they need. So I guess you can call that a political philosophy, but I think that sort of minimizes it a little bit because I think it's a much deeper thing than that. Are there particular albums that you gravitate towards?
I like a lot of the earlier stuff with Bob Marley and the Wailers.
Yeah.
I think his first solo album he did when he left Jamaica, I think he was in London.
Okay.
I actually think that album, I can't remember the name. I think you mentioned it with his achievements. But that album ended up being the most successful one.
Okay. Catch a Fire? Catch a Fire?
Catch a Fire, yeah.
Okay.
And from what I heard from him, he was just saying that for the first time in his life, he wasn't in Jamaica. And he didn't have all the stresses of life and family, and
Yeah.
he was just really concentrating on finding out who he was as a man and exploring his music. And that's why that album came out so good.
Yeah.
So I would say probably the greatest. He has a couple greatest hits albums. I always gravitate towards the greatest hits ones.
The Bob Marley Legend is
right.
when it's like
Legend is,
I mean, there's not a bad track. It's not a bad track
yep.
on the
play
whole
it
album.
all the way through.
But looking at his background, his young life growing up, how you become a sort of an icon of positivity and love when he had such a sad home life, really.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, spent a lot of time alone, not really having his father being part of the picture, having his mother go off to Delaware and him choosing to stay in Jamaica. I mean, that's kind of a lonely,
very lonely,
rudderless kind of path, and he navigated it well.
Very well. Not to mention, a lot of people don't talk about it, but, before he really got famous, he struggled a lot with racial issues because he was of mixed race.
Right.
I think his mother was white and
his father's white.
His father's white,
yes.
and his mother was black. Okay, something. Yeah. So
his father, by the way, in middle age, and his mother was like a teenager.
Oh, really?
So they really weren't. They were married, but then he kind of went off and just sort of never came back. So.
Right. Yeah. I did. Yeah. I did hear a story, but and so I just heard so many stories of him struggling with racial issues before he even before people started looking at him as a hero.
Right.
He was, like you say, he was dealing with all those issues plus the racial issues.
Yeah.
So for him to come out of all of that and represent what he represented, it shows something special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like when you look at, I don't want to trivialize it by saying he's a pop culture icon, but he is. He's certainly more than that. He's more than that. But as a pop culture icon, when you look at people who, because, John Lennon died the year before Bob Marley. Right. And John Lennon is still kind of a divisive figure. You know what I mean? Right. He's got lovers and haters, and there's really bad things about John Lennon. And it just sort of feels like Bob Marley is pretty much universally loved. Right. You know what I mean? Right. Like, there's not a lot of, you can dig into some of his personal choices, but I think overall people just look at him as an inspirational figure, you know? And I think that really adds to the longevity because there's so much to that, you know? So much. And the stuff that he's singing about in the songs, I think some of them are maybe more specific to Jamaica in the late 70s and things that were going on. But, they're presented in a way where the concepts are really universal.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Like I said, looking at our divided times, you can certainly pull, messages and inspiring things from the music and look around the world and be like, this still applies. Unfortunately, this still applies to today and right now.
Right. So many things going on, in that time period. And it's just almost like, he kind of resonated with all that. Just like you say, the whole Rastafarian movement, what it represented back then, some of the things we still, dealing with today.
Yeah.
And it's more just anti-war, more trying to find out how to love each other, how to work together. They dealing with civil war, and this is destroying the country. This is not bringing the country together.
Exactly.
And if you listen to him, that's all he ever. That's his message. So when you have a message like that, it was like a lot of people, like you said, he had a lot of haters.
Yeah.
Obviously try to kill him.
Sure, yeah.
But I would say most of the country was more, following that movement.
Yeah. Well, he's doing this concert. I mean, the One Love concert in the late 70s. The audience was made of people who were sort of bitter enemies, or had at least been made to feel as if they were bitter enemies because of the division in politics at the time. So, to transcend that and bring people together in a way that feels positive and leaves a positive impact is remarkable.
Right. So did you hear about all of the up to when the concert actually happened? Did you hear about how they was trying to stop the concert from happening and how he was just going through all the threats? And, okay, I wasn't sure if you.
Yeah, well, talk about it a little bit.
Well, yeah, that's something that I kind of dove more into with this time reading about him. I didn't really realize that concert that's so popular was a concert that a lot of people say that had a lot to do with why they tried to assassinate him. and I guess he ended up leaving Jamaica because he feared for his life.
Yeah.
And there was, so much political division that they just didn't want that concert. I guess the opposition didn't want that concert to happen.
Yeah.
So I guess for, a month or so leading up to the concert, it was a real consensus of should I do this or I shouldn't do. Yeah. So. Yeah. And I just never understood that before. Yeah. That's something I really noticed this time.
Well, I mean, it seems like, if it's something like that that's going to unify and make happy people are harder to manipulate, right. You know what I mean, right. than embittered people. Right. So I think doing something as powerful and as positive as that would negatively impact if that's not what you want to be happening. You know what I mean? So deep stuff,
Very deep stuff. And you don't really have control over it because, from my understanding, Bob, he didn't have any affiliation with either side.
Right.
But his popularity was so big that the bigger the popular side kind of attached their campaign to his name and to that concert. And that made the opposition feel like they was being left out. Right. And it almost caused more division. Yeah. So, but that's just how evil works. It takes whatever's good and it tries to manipulate that good to make it look like it's not.
Yep.
So
again, relevant even now.
Yes, sir. Always will be.
One of the albums that you'd recommended, and Niki, who works on staff here, also a huge Bob Marley fan, so she and I talked about this a little bit. But Exodus was an album that I kept hearing over and over again. So that's where I started. And then I eventually went to Legend as well. And I kind of sampled all of them. Like I said, as I was doing dishes or just like working around the house or whatever, I had it going. Or when I'm here in my office working, I've just had it going. So I've kind of listened to most of the albums at this point, if not all. Wow. But I really liked Exodus. Exodus is the one that I keep coming back to. I feel like that is, it sort of pulls in all the different eras, and I think it's a really good sampling of what Bob Marley is like, outside of like the Legend, outside of the greatest hits. But what are some of your favorite tracks, not just from that album, but just if you were going to play Bob Marley songs, what would you pull up?
It's so cliche, but One Love is just
it is great. I know it is great.
Sticks in my head, and every time I listen to it, it's just like stuck in my head for that whole week. Yeah. It's just always stuck in my head. Yeah. I would say that's probably my favorite song by him, but it would be hard for me to say because like you said, his music relaxes me so much. Yeah. I could put it on when I'm cooking, when I'm cleaning, when I'm working. Mm-hmm. It relaxes me so much. I love it all.
Yeah.
I love it all.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't bore me. It has an up tempo to it. Mm-hmm. So it's like it makes me feel kind of groovy, like I can dance.
Well, it's got that steady beat, which is nice.
That kind of reggae thing. Yeah. So I just love it all.
Yeah. I agree. Could You Be Loved is one of my favorites.
Oh, definitely.
That's a later one. Definitely. But Three Little Birds, the song Exodus and Stir It Up. I love Stir It Up. Also, well, I think this was a really cool suggestion, and I'm glad we settled on this because, like I said, it's a new one to add to the rotation.
Yes, yes.
And you'll have to let me know what you think when you see the movie.
Oh yes, I can't wait to see that. Maybe, yeah.
He was great. The lead actor who played Bob was like just really solid. Really? He was just fun to watch. I felt like he just really embodied it, which was cool to see on film.
Yeah. I love like music, docs, like anything like that.
I know.
I love all those.
I know. Yeah.
Those are like my favorite movies.
They're really fun. All right, so tell me, if somebody has never sat down and listened to Bob Marley before, what would you suggest?
I would suggest for a brand new, I would suggest The Greatest Hits.
Yeah.
Just because you'll hear a lot of songs that's familiar to you. Yeah. And then you'll hear other songs that'll make you curious about, what else, kind of music does he have? Yeah. And then from the greatest hits, how I did it is from the greatest hits, I picked out like all the like One Love. I picked out all the favorite songs, and then I found out which albums those songs was on, and then I just checked out each album. Yeah. But mainly the ones that you mentioned, those are like the most famous ones, and it's for a reason. Yeah, those
true.
Were like
it's true. You can't deny it.
Yeah, like the one Exodus.
Yep.
I think every song on there is like a hit.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You know,
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it's...
Well, Legend is
I would
helpful.
go greatest hits.
Yeah, because I mean, even though he had a relatively short life, 36, something like that.
Yes, man.
You know,
a lot of music.
I know, and he was recording from the mid '60s to the early '80s, and music changed a lot during that time. So like Legend pulls nice things from different eras where you can really hear it. One thing that I know we both read that I want to mention is we have a graphic novel biography here. It's just called Bob Marley in comics. It's new to our collection, but Malik and I both read it. Very cool, I thought. What did you think of it?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I love the pictures, the illustrations.
Yeah.
It kind of breaks down the story to where you can like understand everything that's happening. It's actually a good introduction.
Yeah, I think so too. And the format is nice because, well, each little subsection has a different art style. Right. So that sort of keeps it visually interesting as you go along. And each section also has like a little summary in just prose rather than graphic novel form. So you can kind of get a picture both ways. But I thought that was a really effective use of a graphic novel and a good biography because it really covers everything.
It does. It really makes you feel like if you don't understand the geography of Jamaica, this graphic novel will kind of make you feel like you visit there before, because it's just got so many pictures and stuff kind of showing you the landscape and the people and the culture.
Yeah.
So it's like when I think Bob Marley, I don't just think Bob. I think he the only person. Like when I think Bruce Lee, I think Kung Fu.
Yeah.
I think Sylvester Stallone, I think action.
Yeah.
Movies.
Sure.
Like when I think Bob, I don't really think music. I more think of the Rastafarian
philosophy.
movement.
Yeah.
And the philosophies. Yeah. So I think that's great.
That makes perfect sense. I don't know if you've read this or not, but I read one called The Future is the Beginning. And what it is a collection of Bob Marley sayings. So it's a relatively slim little hardcover, and there's not really context. It's just kind of like here's a 2-paragraph quote from him, and it's just about all different subjects. Wow. And like as I was reading the music or listening to music and reading, because I also read the Who Was Bob Marley, like the little mini biography.
Who Was Bob Marley?
Yeah, that's a fun one too. But I read that in the biography. But reading the Future is the Beginning collection was kind of nice to see his words put out like that. So as I'm listening to music and reading other things, seeing the quotes come through. But if you don't have that, or if you haven't read it, I think you'd enjoy it.
Definitely
it's
gonna
nice
check
to
that
have. It's nice to have.
And we have that here.
I got it on Libby actually, so you can use the Libby app. Everybody, if you got a library card, you can check things out right on your phone or tablet, wherever you do it. But that's where I got it. Okay. Yeah, well, good pick, Malik.
Yes.
I think this was my favorite of these episodes that we've done.
Yeah. Between this and Bruce Lee.
I know Bruce Lee's.
I can never. Bruce Lee is just.
Yeah.
But another, Phyllis Wheatley, I love that
Phyllis Wheatley
one.
Was fun.
I actually seen some new material by her.
I know.
So I'm like, man, that's one thing I say. Like after we do these podcasts, we end up getting a lot of more material so people can learn more about it.
True.
So, that's a great thing.
Yeah. Well, you can listen to all our back episodes on the library's YouTube page. It's called All the Book Show, or right on SoundCloud.com/allthebooks. You can find all of our episodes. In a couple months, we're going to be back with a poetry episode, Malik. So we got to start talking about what we want to talk about poetry wise.
Yes.
All right. Well, Malik, always good to talk to you. Thanks for joining me on this episode.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Remember, everybody, you can check out Bob Marley music, books, graphic novels, books for kids. We got it all here at the David A. Howe Public Library. So stop in and see us, and we'll see you next time.
Have a great evening.